EXIF tool is a really impressive piece of software. The more I learn about it, the more impressed I am by all the things it can do. It lets you pull out information, metadata about files for lots of different file formats and lots of different kinds of data. And for many of those cases, it even lets you change the data. It gives you a huge number of options for how it presents the data. Not just the format, but which data you present. You can select tags and groups. And you can look at whole directories. You can get information on all the files in the directory and output it in tabular format or CSV format. And if you want, you can even recurse down through all the subdirectories. EXIF tool is great for digital forensics, for figuring out how a file was made, where it came from, or for figuring out why some files behave differently from other files. There was one occasion I was hired to find out why some MP3 files would play on certain models of the Honda MP3 car player, and other files that didn't really seem any different wouldn't play. So I used EXIF tool to analyze the files, looked at the ID3 data in the files, and discovered that there was a certain pattern in the files that wouldn't play that was different from the other files. They weren't defective, but they had some unusual characteristics. And from that I was able to figure out that there was a bug in the MP3 player that was making it not play those files. Honda never fixed the bug, but at least I had the satisfaction of reporting back that I had found what the problem was. Now, if you use EXIF tool to modify files, you get still more power. It can change metadata. It can delete metadata. It can fix up timestamps. It can copy data from one file to another. And it can create sidecar files, files that contain nothing but metadata extracted from files. But wait, there's more. You can use EXIF tool as a Perl library. If you're a Perl programmer, then you can write your own front end to it. Maybe you want to write a GUI for it, or something that'll format the output in a specific way, or feed files to it in a specific way. Or maybe you prefer some other programming language. People have written interfaces to EXIF tool from several different languages, so look around and you might find something that you like. But that's not the kind of stuff we're going to get into in this course. We'll touch on programming just a little bit, not very much. But you should be familiar with the command line. You should be comfortable with it. For this course, I'm going to illustrate EXIF tool using the Linux, Unix, Mac OS command line. You can also use it with the Windows command line, but things will be a little bit different since it's different syntax, different commands, but it's really very close. The PDF files that come with the lectures are very important. There's just too much information about EXIF tool for anybody to absorb it all just from watching a video. So you should download the PDFs and keep them available as a reference. And you should also look at the documentation on the EXIF tool site. It's really good documentation, especially compared to most documentation for open source software. This course will start with downloading and installing EXIF tool. Then from there, it'll go on to basic operations, reading data, doing simple modifications of data, looking at some of the output options. After that, we'll go on to more advanced topics, things like scripting, configuration, conditional operations, and moving data between files. You can stop anytime you want if you've learned what you need to learn, though I'd be happier if you told me that that was the reason you stopped. If there's a problem that you run into with the course, then please let me know, and I'll try to fix it. So, good luck, and let's get started. The first thing you have to do is download EXIF tool. You go to the website shown, and you click where it says to download. The version might be different when you get there. And then you save the gzip file. You need to have Perl installed on your system. It's outside the scope of this course to explain how, but you can go to www.perl.org for information, but it might already be installed. Type Perl -v at a command line. You need to have Perl 5.004 or higher to use exiftool. Then you decompress the gzip file that you downloaded. And then you expand the tar file. I'm illustrating this on a Linux system, which I'm accessing by SSH from a Mac. It would be essentially the same on a Mac using Terminal, and a little different on Windows. Now that you have the directory, you might want to rename it to something simpler, like exiftool 10. You can now move that directory wherever you want, but we'll just leave it here. So the next step is to build exiftool. Go down into the exiftool 10 directory, run perl makefile.pl, then you run make, and then make install. This does require that you have make on your system. If it isn't and you don't know how to install make, you may need to talk to your system administrator. Once you've finished building, you can type man exiftool to get the information about how to use exif, though actually the online information is better. But it's nice to have it there, and there is lots and lots of information, hundreds of lines. So you might want to save it to a file that you can view at your convenience with whatever editor you like best. Do man exiftool and output it to exiftool help, or whatever you want to call the file. There you have it. It's helpful to have exiftool in your path. The details will depend on your exact operating system, but typically it's defined in your profile. So let's look at .profile in the home directory, and then we find the reference to exiftool, which I already have, which just adds exiftool/exiftool10 to the path. With that, you'll be able to type exiftool in any working directory. So now we exit and just type exiftool to prove that that's the case. You might also like to take a look at the README file. And there it is. Next, we'll look at exiftool basics. Installing software is boring, but finally we can actually start doing stuff with exiftool. Exiftool treats all metadata as tags, even data that you wouldn't normally think of as part of the file, but rather as something you get from the file system. Things like the file name and file size. This is a powerful feature because it lets you treat all the metadata the same way. You don't have to worry about the internal structure at all. Tags are organized into groups, which is about the only nod to the internal structure of the metadata. There's a group for exif tags, there's one for XMP tags, and so on. So, what can you do with exiftool? The simplest thing is just to run it on a file. You get lots of information. Each line gives a tag description and a value. You'll notice that file name, directory, and file size are tags. So are many other things. Pages and pages of information. Maybe it's too much information. If you want to see just certain tags, then you can specify them. When you give a tag in an exif tool command, there are no spaces. So file type becomes one word, mime type and shooting mode. And it doesn't matter if you use uppercase or lowercase. Let's say you want to see just the tags in the exif group. Those are generally the ones that give you information from the camera that took the picture. Then you can do it by specifying a group and the shortcut tag all. The group is exif, and the shortcut tag all stands for all the tags in the group or the file. Or maybe you're a glutton for information. You can't have enough. You want to see everything. Then you can use the verbose option. Let's spell it right. I should explain options and tags at this point. They look alike in the command line, but an option is a direction to exif tool to do something, and a tag is a data identifier. If you type a minus sign with a name it doesn't recognize as an option, it tries to find it as a tag. If it can't find the tag, it just ignores it. This means that if you misspell an option, you won't get an error message. You can ask for information on several files at once. Star.jpg, all files with the JPEG extension. You can also give exif tool a whole directory. Let's go up a level now, and then look at the pictures directory. This will report on just the files in that directory, not in its subdirectories. If you want to see information on the subdirectories, then you need to use the -R option, which stands for recursive. Now you see the output includes the files in the NH subdirectory. exif tool defines some shortcut tags for convenience, and it's possible, though complicated, to create user-defined ones. A shortcut tag stands for a set of tags. You can use the tag common to get some of the more useful tags. There are various ways to view the information. You can use the short format, which uses camel case for the tag names. There's also very short, which doesn't pad with spaces to line up with the columns. If you want the tags in alphabetical order, you can specify the sort option. If you want the tags in a different language, you can even specify that. Let's have them say in German. In some cases, but not all, this gives not just the tags but the values in a specified language. Let's try getting a bit more exotic. How about Japanese? And there's Japanese, but apparently Canon PowerShot is Canon PowerShot even in Japanese. Let's pause for a bit here to look at a case study, a real-life case of using exif tool for paying work. A client hired me to find out why some MP3 files of his wouldn't play on his Honda's MP3 player. He sent me 20 files. 10 of them played normally. The other 10 simply wouldn't play on his car. So I started doing some experimenting with them. I opened all the files in QuickTime Player, in iTunes, in Audacity. They all played fine there. I tried playing them on my own Honda's MP3 player, using an MP3 CD, and they played fine too. So what did this tell me? It said that most software regards the files as perfectly good, but it didn't get me any closer to finding out what the problem might be. Next, I tried exiftool. First, I tried just running it on all the files to see if I could find anything of interest. I was looking for things like maybe some difference in the way bit rates or channels were handled. Bitrate is a common issue with MP3 files, but I didn't really find any systematic differences. So then I tried running again, this time with the verbose option, to see what additional information that might give me. And this time, I did find something interesting. But first, I have to do a little explaining. MP3 files can come with two kinds of metadata. They're both called ID3. There's version 1 and version 2. They're very different from each other, and version 2 is the more complicated and flexible one. Almost all MP3 files will have at least one of these, and it's legitimate for a file to have both version 1 and version 2 metadata. When I looked at the files using the verbose mode, I found that all of them had both ID3 v1 and v2 blocks. However, the bad files had no actual data in the version 2 block. So now, I thought, this is interesting. I'm probably onto something here. To get a more exact look at the data, I used another tool, OD, which stands for octal dump, but it can also do hex dumps and other kinds of dumps. I used this to examine the ID3 v2 header, which comes right at the beginning of the file, and for each of the files that wouldn't play, I found the same thing, that the header was a good one. It started with the ASCII characters ID3, then 3 more bytes of data, then 4 bytes of length, and in all of these cases, the length was 0. Now, this is a legitimate case. You can have a header like that. It's not a particularly useful one, but it satisfies the requirements. And every other piece of software that I tried with those files would play them without any problem. It was only the Honda player that wouldn't play them. In fact, only that Honda player. Even the one on my own car would play them. So it's plausible that software testing would overlook the case of a zero-length header and fail to play just in that case, somehow not behave correctly. Honda has never admitted that there's a problem with their MP3 players. They've never recalled them. But still, this shows that you can use exiftool to deal with real-life problems and diagnose them.
Конец. Конец.